Portugal now. This is Lisbon, and you said this is the oldest neighborhood, one of the oldest neighborhoods.
Correct, yes, this is Alfama.
Okay.
This is a neighborhood established by the Phoenicians in the 5th century BC. For those of you who don't know, the Phoenicians were a culture from the Middle East. They were the first famous explorers and traders of the Mediterranean. They established colonies like Carthage, Cadiz, and Lisbon was one of its westernmost colonies. And it was here in Alfama where it's believed that the first Phoenician settlement was established around the 5th century BC.
Okay. So this neighborhood's been there a long time, basically.
A long time, correct? Yes.
Okay.
It's where the city basically started. Some street art.
Yeah, I see.
And I also like to give you a bit of a recommendation. A lot of people who joined this tour are keen on trying African food, and this is a restaurant owned by a good friend of mine. It's Mozambican food, so I have to admit I'm a bit partial to it. What I like to recommend is the matapa, which is a dish made with cassava leaves, peanut, coconut, and it's either served with shrimp or crab, and on a side white maize porridge that we call in Mozambique shima. Which is the staple carbohydrate for lots of parts in Africa, especially southern Africa.
Okay, is it expensive? Was it like was it there? Was it cheap? Is it
this place here? Yeah. It's I would say mid-range. It's also the portions are good to share amongst two people.
Yeah. So that's a good yeah. And it's African food.
Correct. Yeah. And one thing I always like to recommend is to try out our beer, Deuxième, which is one of the most popular beers in Mozambique as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I noticed the roads are very narrow and very hilly, isn't it?
Because this area, as I mentioned, is the oldest part of Lisbon, so it survived the earthquake of 1755. And it maintains a lot of the old medieval features that Lisbon had before the earthquake of 1755. That's a really important fact to keep in mind, because basically the city was destroyed in the mid-18th century in this big earthquake. And it would be subsequently rebuilt a few decades later. And the earthquake wiped out a lot of the buildings that were associated with the slave trade.
Yeah. It reminds me, architecture reminds me a lot of Brazil.
Yeah. Brazil was, of course, a Portuguese colony since the 16th century. And because of that, the Portuguese introduced their language, their architecture, their religion to that part of South America, and controlled the territory until 1822. So of course the influence is there. I also just wanted to share with you some photographs that I have here. So, first thing I wanted to show you is a mural from ancient Mesopotamia showcasing a king, his army, and a group of captives that would have been sold into slavery. Egyptian hieroglyphs with a group of overseers and a group of would-be slaves. A contract from China from around the 7th century AD, which is a bill of sale of a slave. 2 Greek vases, one showcasing domestic workers and one workers in a foundry. Essentially in ancient Greece, a lot of the labor-intensive activities like farming, metalwork, they were done by slaves or second-hand citizens. And the city-states like Sparta, Athens, they would have a tiny elite of citizens that would be responsible for politics and warfare, while most of the work was done by slaves. So slavery was a part of classical Greek society, and of course Roman society as well. You have here a legionnaire with 2 captives of war would have been sold into slavery, and 2 gladiators engaged in combat, and that was a role typically carried out by slaves as well.
Okay, so what does Portugal have to do with the Greeks?
Well, there were Greek settlers here. They came as traders, and later on, Portugal was a part of the Roman Empire.
Okay.
So the Romans, they did live in Lisbon, and they did leave behind ruins that we can still visit today.
Okay.
But this brief introduction was just to underline the fact that slavery emerged in different parts of the world in different periods of time as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not unique to one setting. What is unique about Portugal's role, and which is something that I'll explain later, is that they were the first to introduce the Atlantic Ocean as a corridor to transport slaves.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So they created, you could say, or started the Atlantic slave trade.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where things start to get a bit different.
Okay.
But anyway.